Welcome to Midnight Sleep Chronicles. I'm so glad you're here tonight. Take a breath with me, a slow one. Let your shoulders drop. Let your jaw unclench. Let the weight of the day, all of it, begin to soften at the edges. Tonight, we're going on a journey. Not through space, not through a country or a century. We're going somewhere both closer and farther than any of those. We're going into the heart of a question that every human being who has ever lived has felt, even if they never put words to it. Not just want it, not just value it, love it, with that particular pull in the chest that doesn't quite have a name. That warmth when light catches a ring or a bracelet. That feeling of holding something small and heavy that seems, somehow, to mean more than it should. Here is what I want to offer you tonight, before we even begin. That feeling is not shallow. It is not vanity. It is not greed dressed up as beauty. That feeling is ancient. It runs deeper than any civilization, deeper than any economy, deeper than any religion that ever told a story about gold. What you feel when you hold it goes all the way back to the stars. Literally. By the end of tonight's journey, you'll understand that the gold in your jewelry box, or on your nightstand, or on your finger right now, traveled billions of years to reach you. It was forged in a catastrophe so enormous that our language doesn't have adequate words for it. It drifted through the cold silence of space. It survived the birth of our planet. It passed through the hands of pharaohs and alchemists, pirates and priests, lovers and explorers. And now it's here, with you. We'll discover what science has recently learned about where gold actually comes from, and how that discovery accidentally confirmed what every ancient civilization somehow already knew. We'll move through the great legends of gold. Egyptian priests who called it the flesh of the gods, Incan emperors who called it the sweat of the sun, medieval alchemists who spent their lives trying to make it, and were far closer to the truth than anyone gave them credit for. And finally, we'll go somewhere deeper, into what gold actually reveals about us, about what it means to be human, about what we long for and why. Before we begin, if this journey resonates with you, I'd love if you'd leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It genuinely helps. And I'm curious, do you have a piece of gold that means something to you? Something passed down or given with love? Share it in the comments. Now, settle in. Feel the ground beneath you, the warmth around you. Let your breathing slow. We begin where everything begins, in the dark, in the unimaginable cold and fire of deep space, long before the earth existed. Let's go. Act 1. Reality, where gold actually comes from. Close your eyes and imagine absolute darkness. Not the darkness of a room with the blinds drawn, not even the darkness of a forest at midnight. I mean the darkness of deep space, the vacuum between star systems, where there is no air, no sound, no warmth, no light. Where the nearest star might be 4 light years away, and between here and there is simply nothing. This is 4.5 billion years ago. Our planet doesn't exist yet. Our sun hasn't ignited. The solar system is nothing but a slowly rotating cloud of gas and dust, collapsing under its own gravity. And somewhere in that darkness, something is about to happen that will create gold. 2 neutron stars are racing toward each other. A neutron star is what remains when a massive star burns through all its fuel and collapses. The outer layers explode outward in a supernova. The core collapses inward, crushed by its own gravity until the atoms themselves are compressed. A neutron star is roughly the size of a city, maybe 12 miles across. but it contains more mass than our entire sun. A teaspoon of neutron star material would weigh about 10 billion tons on Earth. These two stellar remnants have been spiraling toward each other for billions of years, bound in a gravitational dance. And now, in an instant, in the blink of an eye, they collide. What happens next releases more energy in 1 second than our sun will emit over its entire 10 billion year lifetime. The fabric of space-time itself shudders. Gravitational waves ripple outward at the speed of light. And in the unimaginable heat and pressure of that collision, heat that makes the surface of the sun look tepid, atoms fuse together in ways that no ordinary star can manage. Heavy elements pour out into space: platinum, uranium, silver, and gold. Vast clouds of it, more massive than entire planets, blasted outward into the void. We know this. We know. Happened because we saw it. In 2017, astronomers detected a kilonova, the name for a neutron-star merger, in a galaxy 130 million light-years away. The signal arrived simultaneously as gravitational waves and light, confirming what theorists had long suspected. The calculations afterward were staggering. That single event produced gold in quantities that dwarf anything on Earth. Many times the mass of our entire planet, scattered across space. That gold drifted. For millions of years, it traveled through the cold dark, mixing with other stellar debris. And eventually, some of it was drawn into the gravitational pull of a forming young star, our sun. As the planets of our solar system coalesced from that swirling disk of gas and dust, gold settled into the new Earth along with everything else. But because gold is so dense, nearly 20 times denser than water, most of it sank. During Earth's earliest molten phase, the gold migrated downward, drawn toward the planet's iron-nickel core. Scientists have calculated how much gold is down there. The number is almost incomprehensible. If we could somehow extract all the gold from Earth's core and spread it evenly across the planet's surface, land and ocean alike, it would cover everything to a depth of 1.5 feet. The entire globe, ankle-deep in gold. We live on a planet wrapped around a golden core, separated from it by 3,000 miles of rock and mantle we can never reach. The gold we mine and wear and trade is a different story. It came later, delivered by the asteroids and meteorites that bombarded the young Earth for its first several 100 million years. These cosmic visitors brought gold back to the surface, where geology slowly concentrated it into veins and deposits over eons. Let that breathe for a moment. The gold in your ring or your necklace was not made on Earth. It was made in a stellar catastrophe that happened before our sun was born. It traveled through space. It survived the formation of a planet. It waited, buried underground, for a human being to find it. It is, in the most literal sense, older than the world. Now imagine you're holding a small piece of gold. Feel its weight, heavier than you'd expect for its size, that satisfying density. Notice how quickly it warms in your hand, matching your body temperature in a way that silver and steel never do. Gold seems almost alive in comparison. That warmth is not an accident. Gold has an exceptionally high thermal conductivity, meaning it exchanges heat with your skin faster than most metals. It quite literally meets you where you are. Now consider what gold doesn't do. It doesn't rust. It doesn't tarnish. It doesn't react with water, with air, with most acids. You can bury gold for 3,000 years and dig it up, and it will look exactly as it did the day it went into the ground. Egyptian gold excavated from tombs sealed since 1500 BCE still gleams. Gold recovered from shipwrecks that sank 4 centuries ago still shines, smooth and perfect, at the bottom of the sea. Every other common metal eventually yields to time. Iron rusts, silver tarnishes, copper turns green. Even platinum, nearly as chemically inert as gold, corrodes slightly in certain conditions. Gold simply doesn't. Chemists call it noble, meaning it refuses to bond with oxygen or most other elements under normal conditions. It stands apart. This is the first mystery of gold. In a world where everything corrodes, crumbles, fades, and decays, gold remains. It is the only naturally occurring substance that looks the same today as it did at the moment of its creation, billions of years ago. Pure gold is extraordinarily soft for a metal. Surprisingly so. A grown adult can scratch it with a fingernail. This softness is the source of one of gold's most astonishing properties, its malleability. A single gram of gold, a quantity so small it would barely be visible, can be drawn into a wire nearly 2 miles long, or hammered into a sheet so thin that it covers a full football field, a layer 10,000 times thinner than a single human hair. At that thickness, something strange happens. Gold becomes transparent, and it doesn't transmit light the way glass does, colorlessly. It transmits light with a blue-green tint, filtering out the warmer wavelengths while letting the cool ones through. A sheet of gold leaf held up to sunlight appears as a window of emerald glass. The metal we think of as warm and yellow, when reduced to its absolute minimum, reveals itself as cool and green, as if gold has been keeping a secret about its own nature. This is not poetic license. It is quantum physics. At such extreme thinness, the electrons in gold start behaving according to quantum mechanical rules rather than classical ones, changing which wavelengths of light they absorb and reflect. Gold's familiar golden color is itself a consequence of quantum mechanics. Most metals appear silver because their electrons reflect all wavelengths equally. Gold's electrons are traveling so fast, influenced by the metal's enormous atomic nucleus, that relativity kicks in. They contract their orbits, absorbing blue light and reflecting yellow and red. Gold is golden because of Einstein's theory of relativity. Every piece of gold jewelry you've ever admired is, in a very real sense, a tiny visible demonstration of Einstein. Here is something that most people don't know, and that I find quietly extraordinary. There is gold in your body right now. Not metaphorically, literally. Approximately 0.2 milligrams of gold is dissolved in the blood and tissues of an average human being. The majority is in the blood. Some is incorporated into enzymes and proteins that help your cells function, including enzymes involved in cellular respiration, the process by which your body converts food into energy. Your body contains gold because gold exists in the soil and water of Earth, in trace amounts, and life evolved using whatever was available. Over billions of years, some biological processes found uses for gold, incorporating it into the molecular machinery of life. You are carrying stardust inside you, not as a metaphor, as a fact, and you are not alone in this. Trees absorb gold from the soil. Scientists in Australia discovered that eucalyptus trees draw gold up from deep underground through their root systems, concentrating tiny particles of it in their leaves. The leaves of these trees literally contain gold, invisible to the naked eye but detectable by sensitive instruments. There are also bacteria, a species called Cupriavidis metallidurans, that live in soils rich in heavy metals. These soils are toxic to most organisms, but these particular bacteria have evolved to absorb dissolved gold compounds, which are poisonous to them, and expel tiny, pure gold nuggets as a kind of waste product. Bacteria make gold, not in large quantities, not in ways that would make mining obsolete. But the process is real. Life, finding itself surrounded by a potentially toxic substance, evolved to turn it into something pure. There's a story in that, if you want to find one. There's another dimension to gold that almost no one talks about, but that jewelers and goldsmiths know well: the way it sounds. Because gold is so dense, it has a distinctive acoustic quality. When a gold object falls onto a hard surface, or when two gold items meet, the tone is lower, richer, and longer than silver or steel. Silver has a bright, almost crystalline ring. Steel has a sharp, short clang. Gold has something deeper, a tone that sustains itself, that hangs in the air a little longer before fading. Almost like the lower register of a cello compared to a violin. In some medieval European monasteries, small amounts of gold were added to the alloy used to cast church bells. Not for monetary reasons, gold was far too expensive for that to make economic sense. It was done for the sound. Monks believed gold-enriched bells produced a more sacred tone, one that seemed to vibrate in the chest rather than just the ears. Modern acousticians have studied this and found it isn't entirely superstition. Gold additions do alter a bell's harmonic profile, lengthening the sustain, enriching the overtones, giving the sound more complexity and warmth. Gold doesn't just look different. It sounds different. It feels different. It behaves differently in almost every physical dimension. No wonder humanity decided it was special. Let's talk about where gold comes from in the ground, because there's something almost mythological about the geography of gold mining. Most gold is found in two formations. The first is hydrothermal veins, deposits that formed when superheated water, carrying dissolved minerals, pushed up through cracks in the Earth's crust. As the water cooled and pressure changed, minerals fell out of solution and crystallized on the walls of those cracks. Gold crystallized alongside quartz, filling the fractures with what miners call a vein. The result is one of nature's most striking objects: white quartz laced with threads and knobs of gold, as if lightning had frozen inside a cloud. These veins form over millions of years. A seam of ore that a miner might blast through in a single day took longer to form than our entire species has existed. The second type is placer deposits. Gold that eroded out of veins over millennia, carried downhill by rain and rivers, and settled in the slowest parts of the current. The gold finds every bend in the river, every quiet pool, every sheltered spot where the water loses its energy. It sinks, because it's so heavy, to the bottom. It waits. This is the gold of the gold rush. The glittering flakes and nuggets that prospectors panned for in the streams of California and the Yukon. The river had done most of the work already, liberating the gold from the rock, concentrating it. A lucky man with a pan could find in an afternoon what took the Earth 10 million years to arrange. The deepest gold mines in the world are in South Africa's Witwatersrand Basin. The deepest of them, the Mponeng mine, extends nearly 2.5 miles below the surface. At that depth, the rock temperature reaches 150 degrees Fahrenheit. Refrigerated water is pumped down in enormous quantities just to keep the tunnels cool enough for human beings to survive. Miners work there in conditions that would have seemed like science fiction to anyone alive 2 centuries ago. They're reaching for gold that formed more than 2 billion years ago, deposited in ancient seabeds that were later buckled and buried by the movements of continents. Gold that has been waiting underground in total darkness and silence, longer than complex life has existed on Earth. The largest gold nugget ever found, the Welcome Stranger, discovered in Victoria, Australia in 1869, weighed nearly 170 pounds. It was found only 2 inches below the surface. 2 miners with a pickaxe, digging almost at random, hit something. cleared away the dirt, found an object the size of a small child, glowing in the gray Australian morning. Imagine that moment. The silence before the comprehension, the wait when they lifted it. For roughly 2,000 years, across every major civilization, medieval Europe, the Islamic world, China, India, a dedicated community of thinkers shared one consuming obsession. They wanted to make gold. They called the process alchemy and themselves alchemists. They built laboratories. They spent years, sometimes entire lifetimes, mixing, heating, dissolving, condensing. They worked with lead, mercury, sulfur, salt, arsenic, and hundreds of other substances in every possible combination. They developed intricate symbolic systems, encrypted their notes, passed their knowledge in coded texts that took scholars centuries to decipher. History tends to remember them as charlatans or eccentrics. But among their ranks were some of the sharpest minds of their eras. Robert Boyle, one of the founders of modern chemistry, began as an alchemist. Isaac Newton, perhaps the greatest scientific mind in history, devoted more time to alchemy than to physics. He wrote over 1 million words on the subject. And here is the remarkable thing. They were right. Gold can be made from other elements. We have done it. In particle accelerators, enormous ring-shaped machines that use powerful magnetic fields to accelerate atomic particles to near the speed of light. Physicists can bombard platinum or mercury with neutrons or high-energy particles. Under the right conditions, some of the atoms absorb the extra particles, their nuclei restructure, and they become atoms of gold. The alchemists dreamed of this for 2,000 years, and it is real. But nature appears to have installed a lock on the process. The cost of creating 1 gram of gold in a laboratory exceeds the cost of mining several tons of it from the earth. The energy required is astronomical. The process is technically possible, economically catastrophic. It's as if the universe built the process, but made it deliberately unaffordable. Gold remains rare not because the laws of physics forbid its creation, but because its creation requires the energy of dying stars. You cannot replicate a neutron star collision in your basement. Gold stays rare because it was born in catastrophe. And that rareness is not an accident, it is the point. Before we leave the realm of science, I want to tell you about one moment in human history that I think captures something essential about gold and about us. In May of 1977, NASA launched 2 spacecraft, Voyager 1 and Voyager 2. They were sent on trajectories that would carry them past the outer planets and eventually out of our solar system entirely. The first human-made objects to enter interstellar space. On the outside of each spacecraft, attached to the hull, is a 12-inch gold-plated copper disc, a phonograph record. On this record are encoded sounds and images selected to represent life and culture on Earth. The sounds of surf, wind, and thunder. The songs of birds. The sounds of a baby crying and a mother offering comfort. Music from dozens of cultures. Bach, Beethoven, a Navajo night chant, a Peruvian wedding song, Chuck Berry's Johnny Be Good, spoken greetings in 55 languages, photographs of humans and animals and landscapes, translated into audio signals that could theoretically be decoded by a sufficiently advanced intelligence. The discs are gold-plated specifically because gold is the only material that can be predicted with confidence to survive in the conditions of interstellar space for billions of years. Radiation, micro-impacts, extreme temperature variations, gold will endure them all without degrading. The record's contents will remain intact, waiting to be found and played for longer than the Earth itself has existed. Somewhere out there right now, as you listen to this, as you breathe and settle toward sleep. Two golden records are drifting through interstellar space, carrying the voices of people who are gone, and the music of civilizations that will long since have transformed into something unrecognizable. Carrying a baby's first cry. Carrying the sound of the ocean. We chose gold to hold our most important message. Not because it was convenient, because it was the only thing that wouldn't let us down. Gold is humanity's most faithful keeper of what matters. Let that image stay with you. A golden disk in the dark between. Stars carrying laughter and music and the sound of rain, waiting patiently for ears that might not exist yet. Breathe. We're moving now from what is measurable to what is felt. From the laboratory to the temple. From the facts that science has confirmed to the stories that human beings have always known. The border between them, as you may already be feeling, is thinner than you would expect. Before we step into the deeper waters of mythology, let's pause on the threshold for a moment. We've traveled through two very different kinds of knowing. The first, the scientific, is the kind that can be tested, replicated, measured. The kind where you can point to the equations and the instruments and say, here is the evidence. Follow the chain of reasoning. Arrive at the same place. Neutron-star collisions, quantum mechanics, particle accelerators confirming 3 millennia after the fact that alchemists were not entirely wrong. The second kind of knowing, the mythological, the cultural, the symbolic, operates differently. It can't be proven in a laboratory. You cannot run a control experiment to determine whether the Egyptians were right to call gold the flesh of the gods. You cannot measure, in any strict scientific sense, what happens in the chest when light catches gold and something in you responds. But here's what I want you to notice. In this particular case, these two kinds of knowing are pointing in the same direction. The science isn't debunking the mythology. It's deepening it. The ancient Egyptians said gold is the material of the immortal, the substance that defeats time. Modern chemistry confirmed that gold is chemically inert, that it genuinely does not corrode, genuinely does not react with the forces that destroy everything else. They were right. The Incas said gold is the physical form of the sun's light. Modern quantum physicists determined that gold's distinctive golden color is a consequence of relativistic effects on its electron orbits. That gold is literally colored by its relationship to the speed of light, the fastest thing in the universe. The solar connection is, at the quantum level, real. Medieval alchemists said that transforming lead into gold required unlocking the deepest secrets of matter. Modern nuclear physicists confirmed that transmuting one element into another requires the same kind of energy that powers the stars. The alchemists were right about the principle. Only the scale was unimaginable. This pattern, ancient intuition confirmed by modern science, appears again and again when we look closely at gold. As if the humans who observed this substance carefully enough over long enough periods sensed something real that they then encoded in the language available to them. The language of the sacred, the mythological, the divine. Perhaps that reality has layers, and different kinds of attention reveal different layers. The scientist's attention reveals the equations. The priest's attention reveals the meaning. The lover's attention reveals the beauty. And when something is genuinely extraordinary, all three kinds of attention agree, in their own language, from their own angle, that something significant is here. Gold is one of the few things in the world about which all three agree. Take a breath. Let that sit. We're carrying this understanding now, that the myths aren't separate from the facts, but are the facts encoded in a different language. As we move into the final act, Here we're not asking what gold is made of, or what stories civilizations have told about it. We're asking what it shows us about ourselves, what it reveals when we hold it up to the face and use it as a mirror. This is the oldest question, and gold, patient and gleaming in the dark, has been waiting to answer it. There's one more piece of the factual record worth knowing before we enter the mythological depths, because it bridges the two so beautifully. Gold has been used as medicine for nearly as long as humans have known it existed. In ancient Egypt, gold was incorporated into ceremonial ointments used in temple healing rituals. In the medieval Islamic world, Avicenna, the great physician and philosopher, recommended drinkable gold as a tonic for heart conditions and melancholy. In Europe, the quest for aurum potabile, literally drinkable gold, was as important to many alchemists as the quest for transmutation itself. They believed that if you could get pure gold into the body, its incorruptibility would transfer, that you could make the flesh like the metal, resistant to decay. This seems naive. But here's the thing. Gold does work in medicine. We know this now. Compounds of gold were discovered in the early 20th century to have anti-inflammatory properties. Gold-based drugs became standard treatments for rheumatoid arthritis, a debilitating autoimmune condition, and are still used today when other treatments fail. The mechanism isn't entirely understood, which is itself interesting. The idea of a treatment that works through a mechanism we haven't fully mapped. But the clinical outcomes are real. More recently, gold nanoparticles have emerged as one of the most promising vehicles in targeted drug delivery. Gold nanoparticles can be coated with molecules that cause them to bind specifically to cancer cells, delivering chemotherapy directly to tumors while leaving healthy tissue undamaged. Gold is being developed as a carrier for drugs that treat everything from cancer to Alzheimer's disease. Gold's biocompatibility, its tendency not to react with biological tissues, not to trigger immune responses, not to corrode in the saltwater environment of the body, makes it an almost ideal material for implants. Gold threads are used in some facial palsy treatments. Gold stents are used in some cardiovascular surgeries. The ancient instinct that gold and health were connected wasn't wrong. It was just that the connection operated at a scale, molecular, cellular, quantum, that ancient medicine had no tools to see. Once again, the intuition was tracking something real. This is what gold does, over and over. It makes ancient intuitions and modern measurements say the same thing in different words. As if this metal, older than our world, has been patiently waiting for our knowledge to catch up to what was always true about it. Act 2. Legends. How gold became sacred picture, ancient Egypt. Not the Egypt of museum exhibits. Stone still, desiccated, frozen behind glass. Living Egypt. 5,000 years ago. It is early morning. The sun has just cleared the horizon over the eastern desert. A priest in white linen stands facing the light, arms raised. His ears are ringed with gold. His chest bears a pectoral of gold and lapis lazuli. His wrists carry gold bands that catch the new light and throw it back. He is not decorating himself. He is putting on sacred armor. Because the Egyptians understood something that we are only now finding the language to confirm. Gold and sunlight are the same thing in different forms. In the Egyptian religious system, one of the most sophisticated and internally consistent theological frameworks ever developed, gold was not merely valuable. It was ontologically different from all other substances. It was called nebu, which meant both gold and the divine. The bodies of the gods were described as made of gold. Their bones were silver, their hair was lapis lazuli. But their flesh, the living, radiant substance of divinity, was gold. The skin of Ra, the sun god, was gold. When the dead pharaoh transformed in the afterlife, his mortal body was said to transmute. His bones became silver, and his flesh became gold. The Book of the Dead, one of the oldest religious texts in human history, contains instructions for this transformation, as if it were a process that could be guided and assisted. They weren't imagining this arbitrarily. They were observing. Gold has the color of sunlight, not the pale silver of most metals, but warm and yellow, the exact spectrum of what streams through a window in the late afternoon. Gold doesn't tarnish in the way silver does, darkening and dulling. Gold stays bright, like the sun, which rises every morning regardless of what the night has brought. Gold seemed to be governed by the same law as the sun. It simply does not yield to time. When Tutankhamun's tomb was opened in 1922, what struck Howard Carter and his team wasn't simply the abundance of gold. It was its condition. Objects placed in that sealed chamber more than 3,000 years earlier were pristine. The golden shrine still gleamed. The solid gold inner coffin, containing the mummified pharaoh, was as brilliant as the day it was sealed. In a culture that built entire civilizations around confronting death, gold was the material that made death irrelevant. You couldn't bury gold and have it decay. You couldn't lose gold to time. In a world where everything else surrendered to entropy, gold refused. And the Egyptians, being extraordinarily perceptive observers of the natural world, noticed and drew the only conclusion that made sense within their framework. This is divine substance. This is the material of the immortal. Cross the Atlantic Ocean, skip forward 1,000 years in human history, and travel to the Andes Mountains of South America, to the Inca Empire, which at its height stretched along the western side of a continent that the rest of the world didn't know existed. The Incas had a name for gold, Inti Kuori, the sweat of the sun, not a metaphor, a literal description of what they believed gold to be. The physical secretion of the solar deity Inti, sweated out of the sky and fallen to earth, where it accumulated in rivers and mountains. Silver was the tears of the moon. In their capital city of Cusco, which they called the navel of the world, stood the Coricancha, the temple of the sun. Its inner walls were sheathed in sheets of solid gold. The floor was gold. The central altar was gold. In the temple's gardens stood full-size golden sculptures of every plant and animal the Incas valued. Golden corn with golden leaves, golden flowers, golden llamas, golden snakes, a golden replica of the sun itself. None of this survives. Every piece was melted down by Spanish conquistadors in 1533 and cast into bars for transport to Spain. We know of it only through the accounts of the men who destroyed it. Spanish chroniclers who wrote with a particular awe of people confronted with something that exceeded their capacity to describe. One wrote, "I would not dare to describe it for fear of being thought a liar." The scale was beyond European experience. The Incas were not decorating a temple. They were building a dwelling place appropriate for a god. And if the sun's body was gold, then the sun's home should be made of gold. Here is something that I find genuinely astonishing. Something that sits right at the edge of what we can explain. The ancient Egyptians and the ancient Incas never met. They were separated by an ocean, by thousands of years, by every conceivable cultural difference. They had different languages, different gods, different histories, different everything. And yet, independently, without any possible communication, they arrived at exactly the same conclusion about gold. Gold is the sun. Gold is light made solid. Gold is the material of the immortal. This is not a coincidence of culture. This is not borrowing or influence. These two civilizations, looking at the same substance, came to the same understanding. Why? Because they were observing the same thing. They were describing, in the language available to them, the actual physical behavior of gold. Gold's color sits in the exact same part of the electromagnetic spectrum as sunlight at the golden hour. Gold's refusal to tarnish mirrors the sun's refusal to be extinguished. Gold's warmth against skin, that property of accepting and returning body heat, is unlike any other metal. And now we have the language of quantum mechanics and astrophysics to add another layer. Gold's color is itself a consequence of relativity. The electrons in gold orbit so fast, influenced by the metal's heavy nucleus, that Einstein's equations change their behavior, compressing their orbits, shifting which wavelengths they absorb. Gold is golden because the physics of the universe makes it so at the deepest level. Egyptian priests and Incan emperors, working with observation and intuition, describe this in the language of the divine. Modern physicists describe it in the language of mathematics. They are pointing at the same phenomenon. The intuition of antiquity and the equations of modernity are converging on the same truth. For 1,000 years, from roughly the 3rd century to the 17th, alchemists worked in their laboratories pursuing a single goal, which they described as the transmutation of base metals into gold. But there's a layer beneath the chemistry that's crucial to understand. The best alchemists, the ones whose writings show real philosophical depth rather than mere greed, understood their work on two levels simultaneously. On the outer level, yes, they were trying to change lead into gold in a furnace. But on the inner level, they were using this as a metaphor for something happening inside themselves. Lead, in alchemical symbolism, represents the base human. Dense, heavy, dull, enslaved to appetite and instinct. Gold represents the realized human, luminous, free, incorruptible, the fullest expression of what a person can become. The stages of the alchemical process: calcination, dissolution, separation, conjunction, fermentation, distillation, coagulation, were understood by initiates as descriptions of the inner work of transformation. The burning away of what no longer serves. The dissolution of rigid identities. The separation of the essential from the inessential. The joining of opposites within oneself. The fermentation of the uncertain. The distillation of something pure. The crystallization into something new. Carl Jung spent years studying alchemical texts and concluded that alchemists, without fully recognizing it, were mapping the territory of psychological transformation. They were describing the process he called individuation, the journey of becoming fully, authentically oneself, which requires confronting and integrating the hidden and rejected parts of one's own nature. In Jung's reading, the gold the alchemists sought was real. It just wasn't in the furnace. This reframing changes how we understand the entire tradition. The alchemists weren't fools pursuing an impossible dream. They were carrying a profound psychological and spiritual insight encoded in metallurgical language, the language that their culture could understand and preserve. The gold they sought was the gold of the self made whole. There's a scientific explanation for why gold captivates us that runs parallel to all the mythology and philosophy. And it's equally fascinating. Neuroscientists believe that the human attraction to shiny things is ancient, far older than any culture, far older than gold jewelry or gold coins. It may predate our species entirely. The theory goes like this. Our primate ancestors lived in environments where survival often depended on finding water. Water, in most natural settings, appears as a reflective surface. A shimmer on the horizon, a glint between rocks, a brightness where the landscape is otherwise matte. The brains of our ancestors that paid attention to that shimmer, that felt something like attraction or excitement when they saw it, were more likely to find water and survive. Over millions of years, natural selection built in a response. Shiny equals potentially important. Shiny equals possibly life-giving. The neural circuit that evaluates shiny things and releases a small pulse of dopamine, the brain signal for pay attention, this might matter, is very old. Gold triggers this circuit powerfully. It is the most intensely and consistently shiny of all naturally occurring substances. It has the right color temperature. That warm yellow gold falls in the frequency range most associated with sunlight. And it moves beautifully, its surface changing subtly as you shift your angle. When you look at a piece of gold, a very ancient part of your brain says, "There's something there. Pay attention. Approach." That response is below conscious thought. It happens before you choose it. And this, perhaps, is why gold's hold on us has never diminished despite everything we know about its origins and uses. We can know intellectually that it's just a heavy element with a particular electron configuration. We can know that its value is partly conventional. And still, when the light catches it, something in us responds. Something that remembers a time when brightness meant life. There's a specific story about gold that deserves its own moment, because it's often misunderstood or diminished. Throughout history, women and gold have been paired, and that pairing is almost always described in terms of vanity or adornment, as if women's relationship to gold is decorative and nothing more. This misses almost everything important about what gold actually meant to women across cultures and centuries. In ancient Mesopotamia, one of the world's first civilizations, a married woman's gold jewelry was legally hers, not her husband's. Hers. In a society where women had almost no property rights, gold worn on the body was the exception. It could not be seized by creditors. It could not be taken by a husband in divorce. It was her independent wealth, her security against every misfortune that might come. This wasn't symbolic. It was practical. In a world without banks, without insurance, without any social safety net, a woman's gold was her freedom. It was the difference between destitution and survival if her husband died, or divorced her, or abandoned her. It could be sold, given as security, or passed to her children. It was portable, durable, universally recognized, and entirely hers. In India, the tradition of Stridhan, literally woman's wealth, is thousands of years old. The gold given to a woman at her wedding belongs to her personally, protected by law, a form of financial autonomy that predates most modern conceptions of women's economic rights by millennia. Women in many Indian communities accumulate gold throughout their lives, not as decoration, but as an independent financial reserve, separate from household finances. The Scythian women of the Eurasian steppes, who lived across what is now Ukraine, Russia, and Central Asia about 2,500 years ago, wore some of the most extraordinary gold jewelry ever found. Archaeological excavations of their burial mounds, called kurgans, reveal women buried with gold torques, gold earrings, gold plaques, gold crowns. The same women are buried with weapons. Many appear to have been warriors, possibly the historical basis for the Greek myths of Amazons. Here, gold is inseparable from female power. Not power over appearance, but power over circumstance. Power in battle. Power that persists after death. The next time you see a woman wearing gold, you're not seeing vanity. You're seeing the end of a thread that runs back thousands of years through warriors and merchants and priestesses and mothers, all of whom understood something about what gold meant when it was yours. Every culture's gold mythology includes a warning. The Greeks gave us King Midas, who was granted a wish by the god Dionysus. Let everything he touched turn to gold. Midas, in his excitement, asked for exactly that. It worked immediately and catastrophically. His food turned to gold the moment it touched his lips. His wine became liquid metal. And when his daughter ran to embrace him, she became a cold, golden statue. The story is often read as a simple lesson about greed. Wanting too much leads to loss, but there's something more precise happening. Midas didn't ask for wealth in the abstract. He asked for the power to create wealth, to produce gold from whatever he touched. He asked to be like a god, transforming the base into the precious with a gesture. He asked for the alchemist's dream. And what he got was isolation. Everything he touched was perfected into gold and made permanently, incorruptibly untouchable. His daughter, warm, alive, imperfect, beloved, became beautiful and completely beyond reach. The story tells us something subtle. There is a form of gold that is death. The gold that replaces the living is the gold that destroys. Gold in service of life, held in the hand, passed between people, worn and given and found, is beautiful. Gold that becomes more important than the living person holding it curdles into something that cuts the holder off from everything worth having. Every alchemical text eventually says the same thing in different words. The goal is not gold for its own sake. The goal is the transformation gold represents. If you pursue the symbol and lose the substance, you have Midas's curse. For nearly 1,500 years, the Silk Road connected China to Rome, and everything in between. Goods moved along it: silk, spices, glass, horses, paper, gunpowder. But what made the Silk Road function? What made strangers trust strangers across vast distances and incomprehensible cultural differences was gold. A merchant traveling from Chang'an to Constantinople would pass through a dozen different kingdoms. He would encounter dozens of different languages, religions, legal systems, and currencies. But everywhere he went, gold was accepted. Not because of any treaty or agreement, because gold was gold everywhere. Historians estimate that in the peak centuries of Silk Road trade, hundreds of tons of gold changed hands annually along those routes, in coins, in ingots, in jewelry used as currency. It was the lubricant that allowed the ancient world's most complex international trading network to function. Gold achieved this because it possessed a combination of properties that no other substance could match. Rare enough to be valuable, common enough to be available, durable enough to travel, divisible enough to make change, and universally recognized. You didn't need a shared language to agree that gold had value. The metal itself communicated. In this sense, gold was humanity's first genuinely international language. Before Latin, before English, before any lingua franca of words, there was gold, a substance that meant the same thing in every tongue. Gold doesn't just travel through history, it holds history, it records it. Gold objects found in archaeological sites often preserve information about the culture that made them far more faithfully than written records, which can be destroyed, miscopied, or fabricated. The golden death mask of Agamemnon, or what Heinrich Schliemann believed to be Agamemnon, found at Mycenae in 1876, gave archaeologists a window into Bronze Age Greek aristocratic culture that no text had provided. The golden torques found in Celtic graves across Europe reveal a level of metallurgical sophistication that challenged the prevailing view of Celtic society as backward and primitive. The Staffordshire hoard, the largest collection of Anglo-Saxon gold ever found, discovered by a metal detectorist in a field in England in 2009, contained 1,500 pieces of gold and silver work, most of it military in origin, apparently stripped from weapons and helmets. It rewrote understanding of the period, suggesting levels of wealth and craftsmanship that historians hadn't expected. Gold survives when everything else is gone. Clay tablets crumble, wood rots, fabric disintegrates, papyrus goes to dust, gold waits. It is the most faithful archive of the past. Every civilization that has ever valued gold has also, accidentally, preserved pieces of itself in gold. And those pieces can still be read, 3,000 years later, as clearly as the day they were made. Before we leave the world of legend and begin our descent into mythology, I want to tell you about a Japanese practice that might be the most quietly profound thing that human beings have done with gold. The practice is called kintsugi, golden joinery, or golden repair. It emerged in Japan sometime in the 15th century, though the exact origins are uncertain, and it is still practiced today. When a piece of valued ceramics breaks, a tea bowl, a vase, a plate, kintsugi does not hide the break. Instead, the broken pieces are gathered carefully. The cracks are filled and rejoined using lacquer mixed with powdered gold, silver, or platinum. The seams are filled with precious metal. The fractures are traced in gold. The result is an object more visually complex than the original, marked by its history, its breaks now made brilliant. The philosophy behind the practice holds that an object's history, including its damage, is part of its beauty, not a flaw to be concealed. The bowl that has been broken and repaired is more interesting than the bowl that has never been broken. It has a story. It has survived. There is an obvious human application here that the tradition makes explicit. People who encounter kintsugi for the first time often feel it as something personal, because we all know what it is to break, to lose something, to fail at something, to be cracked by grief or disappointment or time. And we live in a culture that treats those breaks as deficiencies to be hidden, smoothed over, restored to an appearance of seamlessness. Kintsugi says something else. It says, "The break is where the gold goes." The places where you were damaged are exactly where the beauty can be made visible, if you choose not to hide them. This is not a metaphor invented to make us feel better about suffering. It is an observation about what actually happens when someone works through real hardship without flinching. When someone chooses honesty about their cracks over the performance of seamlessness. Something becomes visible in them that wasn't there before. Something that, in certain lights, catches the light. Breathe. We've moved from the physical to the mythological, from neutron stars to Egyptian priests to Incan temples to Japanese tea bowls. Now we go deeper, into what gold ultimately means. Not as a substance, not as a symbol in any specific culture's story, but as a mirror. A mirror that shows us something true about what it means to be human, what we long for, and what we already carry. Let your breathing slow. Let your eyes grow heavy. We're going somewhere quiet now. Act 3. Mythology. What gold reveals about us. Let your body settle heavier now. There's nowhere to go. Nothing to solve. Just this. The sound of a voice in the dark, and a question that has no wrong answer. We've traveled a long way tonight. We began in the impossible heat of 2 dying stars, colliding somewhere in the dark beyond our galaxy. We watched gold drift through space, settle into a planet, wait in silence for billions of years. We stood beside Egyptian priests who recognized in it something divine, beside Incan emperors who called it the sweat of the sun. We followed it through medieval laboratories and down the silk roads of the ancient world. Now we ask the deeper question, not where does gold come from, and not what stories have humans told about it, but why? Why this particular thing? Why, across every culture, every century, every language? Does gold do something to us? Every culture that has left substantial written or artistic records has a story about loss, about something perfect that was once present and is now gone, about a golden age, and the word itself is telling. When things were better, when the world was more whole, when something essential was present that has since been lost. The Judeo-Christian tradition calls it the Garden of Eden. The Hindus describe the Satya Yuga, the age of truth, the first of 4 world ages, when people lived in righteousness for tens of thousands of years. The ancient Greeks had their golden age under the god Kronos, when humans lived like gods, without labor or sickness or death. The Norse had their pre-Ragnarok era of peace. The Chinese philosophical tradition speaks of a time before human civilization and its complications, when the Tao flowed freely through everything. These are not the same story. They come from different theologies, different cosmologies, different cultural needs. But they share an image, something luminous and whole, now broken or lost. Carl Jung called this the archetype of paradise. He believed it wasn't a memory. We have no actual memory of a golden age, because there wasn't one in the way these stories describe. Rather, it's a symbol of something the psyche contains, an experience of wholeness, of the state before consciousness fractured experience into self and other, subject and object, desire and reality. The longing for a golden age is the longing to feel whole. Gold, as a physical object, allows us to touch this longing in a way that is strangely satisfying. When you hold something gold, you are holding something that actually is what the myth describes: incorruptible, unchanged, exactly as it was when it was made. The idea that things can be permanent, can remain, can survive, gold makes this tangible. You can hold the permanence in your hand. This is not a small thing. We live in the midst of constant change and loss. Things break, people leave or die. What we build ages and falls. What we love transforms. To have something that doesn't, that remains exactly as it was, that will be exactly as it is, offers a particular kind of comfort that is hard to articulate, but immediately felt. Gold doesn't prove that everything is all right. It doesn't fix anything. But it reminds us, quietly, that some things do last. Here's a question worth sitting with in the quiet of this evening. What do you want to last? Not in a grand, existential sense, necessarily. I mean, what are you trying to hold on to? What feels like it's slipping? What do you wish were more permanent than it is? Most of us, if we're honest, are trying to hold on to people. The feeling of being known by someone, the memory of someone we've lost, the state of something that was beautiful and is now over. A relationship, a season of life, a version of ourselves we're not sure we can get back to. Gold speaks to this directly. It's been used across virtually every culture to mark the moments we most want to hold. Wedding rings, the jewelry passed from mother to daughter, coins minted in the year of someone's birth, given as a keepsake, the thin gold chain worn by someone who died, now worn by the person who loved them. We reach for gold when we want to say, this mattered. This is worth keeping. I want something permanent to stand in for what I know I can't keep forever. And here's the thing about that impulse. It's right. It's not denial. It's not a refusal to accept impermanence. It's an affirmation that some things were worth the weight of gold. Some moments, some people, some relationships deserve to be marked by the one substance that survives. The gold doesn't hold the person, but it holds the intention. You were worth holding, and the gold will still be there, still unchanged when the intention has passed and the people who held it are gone. The gold carries the fact that it was held. There's a seeming contradiction at the heart of gold's relationship to human life. Gold is permanent. We are not. Gold endures for billions of years. The longest human life is less than a century. Gold doesn't age. We do nothing but age. Gold is unchanging. We are nothing but change. So why do impermanent beings reach for the permanent? Why does the temporary want to hold the eternal? I think the answer is not that we want to become gold, not that we're in denial about our own transience. I think the answer is something more beautiful. We are temporary guardians of what is permanent. This phrase changes the relationship entirely. You don't own the gold, not in any ultimate sense. You hold it for a while. You are the current chapter in its story, and it is one thread in yours. When you're gone, the gold will go somewhere else, into someone else's story, into someone else's hands. It will warm to their temperature, catch their light, carry their fingerprints for a while. Every piece of gold in the world has passed through many hands. The gold in a wedding ring sold at an estate sale may have been in a dozen different people's stories before it found its current wearer. The gold in a bracelet bought new from a jeweler contains atoms that have been part of the earth for billions of years, that were in rivers before humans existed, that were in the ground while civilizations rose and fell above them. When you hold gold, you are in continuity with an unbroken chain of the past. And when you release it, give it away, pass it on, let it go, you become part of the chain that connects to an unimaginable future. This is not sad. This is one of the most comforting things I know. You are part of something long, something that started before you and will continue after you. Your particular, individual, irreplaceable experience of being alive, this night, this breath, this moment, is a chapter in a story that is genuinely ancient and genuinely infinite. And gold, sitting quietly in the dark somewhere, near you, is the physical proof of this. Every culture's gold mythology includes a warning, and it's worth pausing on that. The Midas story, the cursed treasure of the Nibelungs, which destroys every hero and king who possesses it. The golden idols of the Bible, the treasure of El Dorado, which lured thousands of men to their deaths in the jungles of South America. The gold of the Incas, which funded the conquest that destroyed their civilization. Gold and catastrophe are paired as often as gold and beauty. This is not coincidental. The same quality that makes gold a symbol of the eternal makes it a test of the human. Gold doesn't corrupt everyone who touches it, but it amplifies what's already there. Give gold to someone wise and generous, and it becomes an instrument of generosity. Give it to someone frightened and grasping, and it becomes an instrument of destruction. Gold is a mirror. This is Plato's argument in the story of Atlantis, which is a gold story at its core. A great civilization, magnificent in its achievements, that accumulated vast wealth and power, and then became consumed by those things, pursuing domination over wisdom, expansion over justice, and was destroyed not by an external enemy, but by its own corruption. Every civilization in history that has been destroyed by gold, and there are many, was destroyed not by the metal itself, but by what the metal revealed about the people who held it. The Spanish Empire was not ruined by Aztec and Inca gold. It was ruined by what the sudden availability of vast wealth brought out in its rulers and institutions. The abandonment of production in favor of extraction, the willingness to use any cruelty to protect access to the source. Gold is not the villain. Gold is the test. And this applies not just to civilizations, but to individuals. The test is, can you hold something precious without being consumed by the holding? Can you be wealthy, in any sense of the word, without the wealth becoming more important than the people around you? Can you value what is lasting without treating the temporary as worthless? Midas failed this test. But the story of Midas wasn't told to make us afraid of gold. It was told to remind us what the real treasure is. His daughter, warm and living and imperfect, was worth infinitely more than all the gold he'd turned her into. The moment he understood this, when grief cut through his intoxication with power, he had arrived at the beginning of wisdom. Some things cannot be improved by being turned to gold. Some things are already more precious in their imperfect, mortal, fragile form. Photographers speak of the golden hour, the first hour of morning light and the last hour of afternoon light, when the sun is low and its rays travel through more of the atmosphere, warming and softening everything they touch. Faces look better. Landscapes look more themselves. The ordinary becomes beautiful. It's not an accident that we named this the golden hour. Gold is the standard for that quality of light, not the white brightness of noon, not the silver clarity of midday, but the warm, low, slanting light that makes everything it touches look like it matters. This is the hour of transition. Morning golden hour is the border between night and day, between sleeping and waking, between the world of dreams and the world of tasks. Evening golden hour is the border between day and night, between doing and resting, between the self that moves through the world and the self that returns to itself. Gold lives at the border. That's its natural place. Egyptian temples were oriented to catch the light at dawn, so that gold-sheathed inner sanctuaries blazed with the first rays of the sun. The transition point between darkness and light, between absence and presence. Japanese tea ceremonies in the kintsugi tradition were often held in the early morning. The gold-repaired tea bowls were meant to be seen in changing light, the seams catching and releasing brilliance as the light shifted. We are in golden hour right now, in a different sense. This moment between waking and sleep, this place you are right now, reading these words, feeling the day recede, is a kind of golden hour. The transition between one state and another, the threshold. And threshold moments like gold reveal what's true. When the day's performance falls away, when the busyness stops, when you're just here, breathing, present to whatever is actually in you. What's there? For most people, honestly, what's there is something much softer than their daytime selves, something more tender, something that cares deeply about the people in their lives and the life they're living, something that knows what actually matters, even when the day made it hard to act on that knowledge. That is the gold in you. Not wealth, not achievement, not the self that performs and produces and moves through the world efficiently. The part that feels, the part that loves, the part that is, underneath all the complexity, looking for connection and meaning and the reassurance that things are all right. That part doesn't age. It doesn't tarnish. It's been there since you were born. It will be there at the end. That part is already gold. I want to return to this idea, because I think it's the most useful thing gold can offer us as a way of understanding our lives. We are temporary guardians of what is permanent. This is true of gold literally. The gold passes through our hands and goes on. But it's true of almost everything we love and hold. We are temporary guardians of the children in our lives, who will grow into their own lives and pass beyond our holding. We are temporary guardians of the relationships we've built, which require constant tending and can end in any number of ways. But while we hold them, are ours to cherish. We are temporary guardians of our own bodies. These remarkable, irreplaceable instruments of experience, which will not last forever, but which are entirely capable, right now, tonight, of feeling warmth and breathing air and lying in the dark and being alive. We are temporary guardians of the moments of beauty that cross our paths. A piece of music that undoes something in your chest. A view that makes you feel small in the best possible way. A conversation in which you are truly seen. None of these last. Everything we love is impermanent in the literal, physical sense. And yet the guardianship is real. The relationship, while it lasts, is as real as gold. The love, while it lasts, is as real as anything that has ever existed. The gold in a ring given in love doesn't hold the love. But it holds the fact that the love was real enough to be marked. That the moment was worth the weight of something that will outlast the moment. This, I think, is why humans have always reached for gold at the moments that matter most. Not because we believe the gold will make those moments permanent, but because we want to say, in a language older than words, this was real, this counted, I was here, and this mattered. And I want to mark it with something that will not pretend otherwise. You have, somewhere in or near you, gold atoms. They're in your blood. They were incorporated into the molecules of your body from the food and water and air of the earth. They're ancient, as old as any gold ever mined, because all gold is ancient. And somewhere near you, probably, is gold in another form. A piece of jewelry, a keepsake, something given or inherited or bought in a particular moment. Every piece has a story, even if you only know part of it. But I want to talk about a different kind of gold. The kind that doesn't come from a neutron star collision. The kind that isn't measured in grams and carats. There are things in every human life that qualify as gold by the standard that matters most. They are true, they are lasting, they are not consumed by time. A capacity for kindness, consistently shown, is gold of this kind. A commitment to honesty, maintained even when it would be easier to flinch from it. The particular way you love the people you love, not perfectly, not without failure, but genuinely, with the weight of real care. These things don't tarnish. They may be buried for a while, by depression, by circumstance, by the demands of survival. But they are not destroyed. They wait, the way gold waits in underground veins, for the conditions that allow them to come to the surface. People come back to themselves. That's one of the things we know about human beings. People who have been cruel become kind. People who were lost find their way. People who buried their tenderness under necessity dig back down and find it still there, unchanged, waiting. This is the gold in us. It doesn't require a neutron star to create it. It requires only honesty, attention, and the willingness to look. We've traveled a long way tonight. From the violence of a star collision to the quiet of a Japanese tea bowl. From the fires of an Egyptian temple to the cold precision of a particle accelerator. From the thunder of gold rush rivers to the silence between the stars where two golden records are drifting, carrying human voices into the unknown. Gold is genuinely extraordinary, not in the sense of pretty and valuable, but extraordinary in the literal sense. It is outside the ordinary order of things on Earth. It wasn't made here. It doesn't behave like other substances. It keeps the records of the ancient world. It travels from civilization to civilization, century to century, carrying some residue of every hand that has ever held it. Every culture that has ever encountered gold has recognized something in it that reaches beyond the merely physical. Egyptian priests were not being superstitious when they called it the flesh of the gods. They were observing something true, that this substance behaves differently, that it seems to exist by different rules, that it carries in its physical properties something that the rest of the material world does not. And the modern story, the neutron star story, the quantum mechanics story, the Voyager story, doesn't replace their intuition. It confirms it. It says, yes, you were right. This thing is different. It was born in catastrophe. It survived everything. It carries the capacity to outlast anything we can build. The search for gold has driven human history in ways both terrible and wonderful. It has funded conquest and colonization. It has also funded exploration, trade, and the extraordinary cultural exchanges of the Silk Road. It has brought out the best and worst in us, as all genuine tests do. And through all of this, the gold itself remains unchanged, unaffected, patient. It does not care whether it is in a crown or a drain. It does not know whether it is in the vault of a central bank or in the ring on a sleeping person's finger. It simply is what it is, fully at every moment, luminous, dense, warm, incorruptible. We might all aspire to that, to simply be what we are, fully at every moment, not performing, not corroding under pressure, not dimming in the dark, just present and genuine and warm to whoever holds us. Rest now. Let the day go completely. You are, right now, doing something that matters. You are giving your mind and body the rest they need. You are allowing the day's noise to settle. You are making space for the quiet processes of healing, of integration, of dreaming that require stillness to do their work. Tomorrow will have its own weight. There will be things to do, decisions to make, people to be present for. That's fine. That's life. But tonight, from right now, in this golden hour between waking and sleep, you can simply be here, a temporary guardian of a permanent moment, a piece of stardust, awake and aware, and breathing in the dark. Dream of things that last. Dream of the gold that runs through everything, through the geological record of the earth, through the blood of your body, through the hands of everyone who ever held something precious and meant it. Dream of the part of yourself that doesn't tarnish, the part that was present at the beginning and will be present at the end, the part that loves what it loves without negotiation. That part is real as anything that has ever existed, as old as the stars that made you. Good night. Until we meet again, in the dark, in the quiet, in the long gold thread that connects everything that has ever been. Good night.